Okay, hello everybody. My name is Mike Grieve. I'm Commercial Director at Mo-Sys Engineering, and my friend and trusty partner here is Riz from Pixeleyed Pictures. And we're going to talk to you a little bit about virtual production and some of the issues faced right now in this huge wave of a new style of shooting. So I met Riz when I was at Red. He is an accomplished shooter, and he'll tell you all about his background shortly. But we're really here to talk about one of the things that's affecting virtual production. You've seen it in the press, you've seen it online, you've seen outputs of virtual production using movies and TV and commercials and so on. And it is a really exciting area of the business. It will definitely move forwards. Green screen and blue screen are not going anywhere. They're still going to be there. They're going to coexist with LED volumes and XR. But there's some distinct issues that we all have to face at the moment, and one of the biggest ones is actually finding enough people who know how to do this and to get the maximum out of shooting with virtual production. So Riz and I are just going to talk about some of our experiences and what we're doing collectively. And I think I'll probably start off with you.
Fair.
Introduce yourself.
Well, my name is Rizwan Wadan, and I'm known in the industry for kind of pioneering the stabilization system solution. So I kind of have developed that, and this is what I'm really known for. But we kind of moved towards producing content because this is something that we wanted to do, to also provide opportunities to nurture new talent. So one of the best ways we've felt to do that was to take learners through real-world projects where you take them through an end-to-end from pre-production, production to post-production, and kind of have something to show at the end of it, because you want to know what you're creating. So I think that's kind of like my background in a short sense, and we're working closely with Mo-Sys and Mo-Sys Academy, and we can talk about that in a sec.
Yeah, so there are lots of challenges with virtual production right now. Some of them are a shortage of chips, GPU cards. There's a lot of people doing cryptocurrency data mining, buying all the GPUs, which is not great when you need GPUs to drive XR servers. So these are all well known, and various companies have their roots around these problems. But the biggest one that faces all of us is a lack of people who understand how to do this properly. And I'm not talking about virtual studios. That's been going since early 1990s. I'm talking about using LED volumes, talking about doing on-set previs and final pixel. This is all fairly new, and there's some really interesting challenges. So it's trying to find people who understand these challenges and how to get the best out of LED volumes and XR shooting is quite difficult. As a manufacturer, Mo-Sys has been involved in this from the very beginning. You probably see in our stand down there shots of Gravity, where we're using a stabilized head to shoot with a motion control rig with LED walls. That's back in 2013, so it's quite a way back. But having people who understand this technology and how to really get the maximum out of it is an issue. So what we find is we have lots of interested people coming to us with projects, desires to build LED volumes and XR walls, but they don't have the people who actually drive the kit and understand some of the peculiarities of LED volume shooting. So that's the issue we're facing. And we have various things that we're doing, but Riz, what are you doing?
So the thing is that what we've realized is that there's this whole demand for virtual production, and Mandalorian has kind of made people start thinking oh, what can we actually achieve? And people are seeing these stages, and it's captivating the attention of the next generation. And even now, a lot of the DOPs that are trying to make similar sort of, to overcome some of the similar challenges. But the problem is that the technology is quite new. So that's, we're finding there's also, because of COVID, there's been a bottlenecking in production. So therefore, there's a huge demand, not just for entry-level virtual production technicians, but there's these new roles that are coming out, a new division that's kind of being formed. So back with the whole stabilization boom, with these gimbals that we were manufacturing, at first you had this opposition from these operators, and people didn't want to adapt to change. And then soon you started seeing DOPs and production starting to adapt this new technology, and now you have a new department. So, I'm going to ask you a question. Why is there a shortage of VP experienced crew? This is the bottlenecking is one aspect of it, but what do you think is causing this?
Yeah, so we often ask ourselves the same question, but I think it comes from the fact that virtual production, and by that I mean all flavors. So, the virtual studios, augmented reality, mixed reality, extended reality and full CG. It's all fairly new, and as much as people are really interested and excited by the technology, they've rushed ahead to find their LED volumes, find their XR or media server, find a tracking solution, and then they've gone, well, how do I do this? How do I make this work? How do I solve the inherent issues with LED volumes? So it's new, and like every technology change, you get people, a very few number of people who understand how to do it properly, and it takes time for that knowledge to permeate through the ranks to everybody. So I think it's just because it's new is the first thing. And secondly, because the technology has raced ahead of the people knowing how to really extract the true value out of it. So these are some of the issues. We're now in a position where, I mean, we've been incredibly busy for the last 12 months at least. You know, no trade shows, and all of our business has gone up. And it's really because people are so excited by what they saw with The Mandalorian, and they want to emulate it. But actually, this has been driven way before that film. It was been driven essentially by Netflix, who realized way back 3 or 4 years ago that they were going to run out of post-production capability. And so they had to do something, and that's where on-set previs came from. The ability to preview and monitor at that time the visual effects shots, so the DP, the director, can see the graphics with the live talent, and avoiding some of those issues that you normally get where, you know, the live talent isn't looking at the eye line of the virtual character, or where Tom Cruise walks through the spaceship and he shouldn't. So sorting out those problems saved them lots of money. But even beyond that, their ambition level, production-wise, they knew that something was going to happen. So they were driving this even before The Mandalorian came about. And then it just exploded. Everybody wants to do LED volume shooting. So yeah,
there's a huge rise in that, and to be honest, we're looking at space ourselves in Blackburn, so we've blocked out a space for that. But the challenges that we face is not just for entry-level kind of learners, but it's actually DOPs, producers, production designers, anybody that's kind of like trying to make a production. They need to understand what this is, what the challenges are. So I think there's a great opportunity for a lot of these professionals within the industry for them to also gain the skills and an understanding of how we can use your technologies, use and collaborate with other manufacturers to be able to kind of like help them to turn their vision into reality. Yeah. So what's Mo-Sys doing to kind of like help with that?
So we see the challenge in kind of two parts. There is the current generation of people, so people who are used to shooting, you know, normal TV or feature film, and they need to almost cross-train to get into virtual production shooting. That's one side. And then there's a generation beyond that, which are the university people coming out of film schools who need to learn this technology to fill in the gaps in demand for production crew who know how to use this tech. So we sit in two halves. University-wise, we're already engaged with unis. We've got equipment going in there. It's been going in there all year. And they are gearing up to teach virtual production to that generation, which is brilliant. And so what we can do is work with them on the equipment side and then go in and train them and actually give them the on-set experience that they can't get and tell them what the latest techniques are, you know, what people are doing to combat some of the issues. And then the other side is the pros, and these are people who want to shoot virtual production, haven't done it before, but they know everything else. They know how to use a camera and how to, you know, to do regular production. And for them, we think the best thing is to work with the guilds and the societies, you know, GTC, GBCC, all of those camera guilds where we can actually train 20 or 30 people in one go rather than individually doing one after the other in Mo-Sys. So we've joined a lot of these this year. I think we've joined Imago, BSC, ASC, GTC, GBTC, and ACO, I think. With the idea of doing that we can actually work with them. And
have you left the grips out?
There's loads of them, I know. I just said join them all. So, but that's the best way, because then they know all the right people to go after. They can offer the framework around the course, and we can come in and just basically talk about the kit and provide our experience. I mean, we don't just manufacture, we're forced actually to go and do some of the productions because people are not completely au fait with doing it. So we do them, we learn, we modify our equipment, and actually we gain experience from doing it as well, which we can pass on. And that's one of the things we're really quite keen on, is imparting and distributing knowledge, because unless the whole industry grows to accommodate virtual production, we're all going to have a problem at some point. So yeah.
Yeah, so leading on to that, like testing and shootouts are a critical part of like the kind of production stage. Early on, DOPs or directors will approach manufacturers or companies and they'll say, look, can we test this concept out? And so therefore there's actually an amazing opportunity, and this is what we're trying to do with Mo-Sys Academy and what we're trying to do with the Step Up Hub in Blackburn to kind of connect this technologies and this opportunity. And that is to take individuals that are learners to pair them up with members of the guild and, of course, professionals who are trying to shoot something to kind of give a real-world test environment. So have a space where they can turn their concepts and visions into reality so you know the technology works. Then the learners, when I say learners, we're talking about those that are seriously committed, coming out of university, and they want to get into the filming industry. And for those individuals, there's a great opportunity to connect with members of the guild and industry partners, manufacturers, such as Mo-Sys, to be able to kind of create these opportunities and then have something to show at the end of it, which is kind of like equally important for learners or people coming out of universities, as probably more important than a degree in many ways, because you've kind of gone through something and you have something to show. So that's quite important. So Mo-Sys Academy is kind of facilitating that. So when you think about Mo-Sys Academy, for a minute it sounds like it's just for like, kids or what. So it's not just for like entry-level kind of learners. Who is it for?
Yeah, so Mo-Sys Academy sort of describes multiple things we're doing. We're doing training courses that we can potentially pass on to universities to build degree courses. We're doing courses for that production companies could use to educate their crews. We're also doing what I call cross-training courses where we can bring people in, they can do test shoots. So we will shortly have in LA in our office there, and a facility that people can come in and de-risk by test shooting. So they can't hire it for a week, but they can come in for 2 or 3 days and try some shots to make sure they work and make sure the techniques they're thinking about actually do come through. So it's a multi-aspect approach to all this, and it is going after both the younger people and the experienced professionals who just don't have the knowledge in VP.
Yeah, so also it's important for manufacturers to also play their part right now because there's a huge kit shortage. I mean, it's massive. If you're going to a rental house and you're trying to get you're trying to just get support like we used to be able to get support to get kit, it's almost impossible right now. And that's kind of where manufacturers have to play their part to collaborate and work together to kind of fill that shortage. There's definitely a massive shortage for camera technicians, entry-level kind of roles. And so I think apprenticeships are also important as well, so manufacturers kind of need to look at that. So there's a huge kind of demand for this need for kind of talent, right? Need for skilled crew. So how can we kind of like, how can experienced crew as well get involved with getting virtual production training and connect with this kind of like need for like entry-level positions? How can they do that?
Yes, I think it's through the societies and guilds. That's the easiest way to do it. I mean, Mo-Sys, we run training for people who've invested or are about to invest in our technology. But actually, the trick here, I think, is to work with the societies and the guilds and produce courses which run and educate more than 4 or 5 people at one go. So we're very keen to work with the societies and do that. And we think that way we can get a really great environment where we can get not only people who have shot virtual production coming back with their experiences, which we can bring in to help us do the courses, but actually learn some of the issues that people have and what they need to learn, and steer the course accordingly. So, yeah, I think that's how to do it. Societies and groups are the best way.
So I think that the kind of like tech development that's happening now, the research and development, is making kind of the technology more accessible to independent film as well, isn't it? It's kind of making it not cheaper, but it's making it more accessible. So what sort of role could we play to support independent filmmakers, independent productions? What could we do with that?
Yeah, I mean, just to go back to that, so one of the great things about shooting on an LED wall is you can create any environment. So you don't have to, for example, shut down Media City Central Square here. You can actually recreate it in 3 dimensions and put it into an Unreal scene on the wall and then have people there. So that's great for smaller size production companies, who've got limited budgets for making content. They can actually create an awful lot of this using the Unreal Engine. Again, going back, what can we do for the smaller companies? Well, the kit is getting less expensive, and you don't need as big a wall as you used to need because the pixel pictures are getting better. So there are things that are happening that are making it much more accessible for smaller companies with smaller budgets. But again, it's education's key, because once you know how it works and how to do it properly, you can there are actually shortcuts you can take and still get an amazing looking image on the screen. So yeah, it's a combination of those two.
Okay. You did mention that even professionals at a very high level need to educate themselves. You know, like there's this kind of issue within the industry where virtual production isn't properly understood. Yeah, that's quite a big problem, right?
Yeah, it is. So one of the things that, you know, we heard it a lot was that, you know, LED walls were going to kill off blue screen and green screen. They're not. They're going to coexist, and there's very good reasons why that will happen. But understanding what shots work well in LED volume and what shots work better in a green screen is crucial. And some of the more, we think that some of the studios going forwards actually will have both. So in one studio, you'll have at one end an LED volume, and at the other end, you'll have maybe a green or a blue screen. So for all your fine detail shots, hair and fur and foliage and so on, you'll shoot that green screen because it's better adapted for that. And for shots that you just need the background and the composite shot done as fast as possible, they'll shoot final pixel on the LED wall. And those two together make an awful lot of sense. So you basically track up the studio, have one or two cameras, and they just swap round from green screen or blue screen to LED wall. That's entirely viable doing that.
Okay, so I mean, I'm wondering if we can ask some questions, because we have some of our learners with us. So we've set up something called the Step Up Hub. So this is in Blackburn, and our learners are actually here today. And I think it's quite important also for just for entry-level people who are really interested in getting into the filming industry. They kind of need to understand their expectations, the different departments, the different people that work together, the different technologies that work together, how long it could take to make a project, and kind of like the reality of working in the industry. And I think that 90% of universities are equipped with the equipment. They are, you know, they have all the latest technologies, but I would say majority of universities, you know, they need support from industry to educate them, to also help them to kind of level up with their technologies. And this is something that, you know, has to be kind of done. You're working with universities, but is there anything else that you could recommend the industry to get involved in to make sure that individuals who are spending £50,000 coming out of university, that their degrees amount to something, so they don't end up with not being able to even get an entry-level job within the industry, which unfortunately I found a lot of individuals have ended up in that situation. How can industry support, how can industries kind of like help the universities to do that?
Yeah, and I think it's a case of manufacturers working together. So rather than just having, you know, Mo-Sys trying to push this along, is to get more companies in the same space or connected with the space to agree that we need to work together and drive this forwards for the benefit of all, frankly. But going back to, you know, the kids coming out of uni with debt and a degree and then needing really to get into a job quickly, and that's where manufacturers working with unis to give the, you know, the onset experience, the final professional view of, you know, what's the latest technique in doing something to avoid, you know, some of the issues. That working with unis will pay dividends. It's, you know, it's not easy, it's time consuming, but actually, if we want to see a generation of young people coming out that can walk onto set and know what they're doing and provide real value, then we have to work with them at that stage. So yeah, I think working with unis is really important.
I think talking about young generation, I think we're forgetting something really critical actually. And you mentioned this downstairs, social media. I mean, I'd say when I was younger, it wasn't really, we didn't have these technologies. We weren't able to just grab a phone and shoot something. The earliest you could get your hand on something would be when you're 16, 17, 18, and you'd be able to process film. It wasn't as accessible. So now we're faced with a generation that can shoot, and probably there's some light VFX you could do in these phones, actually. There's a lot of people within, there's an expansion of reach of the kind of industry's kind of global now. So this is accessible everywhere. So I think that the next generation is going to be a lot more aware of how to make what a camera is, how to shoot something. So I think we need to kind of like reevaluate our position in the industry as well. And the grown-ups in the industry need to kind of look at like the next generation and not just look at university. Yeah. I think we need some career guidance a bit earlier. And so this is something that's quite important. So we're working with you guys to kind of, you know, work with colleges, schools, and the next generation to be able to tell stories. So I think finishing up on, I think we've covered all the ground, unless there's something else that you.
No, I think that's
you
it.
can think
So,
of, yeah.
so the problem is talent, and generating talent and educating people so that they can become good talent is the key thing here. And there's a number of initiatives that we're doing. I think as the industry comes together and we work together, I think it's going to get solved fairly quickly. But it needs to be done now, not in a year's time. That's the key thing.
Yeah, and the final message from myself would be for the industry to really second up on you. I'll double down. Is that the industry needs to work together, because there is a boom. That means if there's a bottleneck, and there are opportunities, that means that the career progression for individuals is a lot faster as well. So you can move up the ranks quicker. There's a lot more opportunity for others to get into the industry. I mean, yes, there's also the industry is crying out for diversity. They're crying out for talent from different communities, disadvantaged backgrounds, and people who've come from that. And I think the industry can just support initiatives like Mo-Sys Academy and everyone else that's working together. Industry needs to work together to make this happen.
Any questions from you
Yeah.
guys? Anything we haven't covered that you want us to perhaps comment on? No? We've got it all right then, have we? That'll be a first. Are
Yeah.
we? You sure? Okay. All right. If there's no other questions, thank you for watching, guys, and have a great show. Thank you.